Good evening, I'm Parikshit Luthra. You are watching News Center. The first person outside the Tata family to head Tata Sons, the holding company of the conglomerate's sprawling business interest, Cyrus Mistry, was killed in a car crash in Maharashtra's Palghar district. The 54-year-old Mistry had served at the helm from December 2012 till October 24, 2016, when he was ousted. This sparked a long drawn-out legal battle that finally culminated in the Supreme Court ruling against Mistry and in favor of the Tatas. Tributes poured in from Indian industry, with top industry veterans taking to social media to offer their condolences. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called Mistry's death a huge loss to the world of commerce and industry. We're now joined by someone who worked extremely closely with Cyrus Mistry, Dr. Mukund Rajan, former brand custodian of the Tata Group and a member of the Group Executive Council that was appointed during Cyrus Mistry's time as chairman of Tata Sons. Mr. Rajan is currently the chairman of eCube Investment Ventures. Mr. Rajan, thank you for joining us. Indeed, a big loss for his family, for the industry. Give us a sense of how you remember Cyrus Mistry.
Well, we've all seen the photographs of Cyrus, I think, with a smiling face, the jovial demeanor, very informal with most people that he would meet. And that's the sort of image one would preserve of somebody very, very easy to get along with, feet completely grounded, somebody who had no airs and was truly committed to just delivering on the massive responsibility he carried and doing the job well. Somebody who cared deeply about people, who cared about communities, and who understood the huge responsibility he was carrying as Tata Group chairman. So massive loss, I think, for the country. He had so many decades ahead of him when he could have contributed so much more. And possibly the smartest person I've ever met in my life. Huge intelligence, extremely well-read, and deep caring and concern about people. Those are my memories of Cyrus.
Right. He took over as the youngest chairman of the Tata Group at the age of 44 in 2012. Give us a sense of the vision that he had for the group, what he may have shared with you or what you sensed in your interactions with him.
Well, one minor correction, because I've seen this in the media. J.R.D. Tata, of course, became chairman of the Tata Group in his early 30s. So he was even younger than Cyrus. But I think what stood out about Cyrus was the fact that he was brought into the group. Unlike J.R.D., he had not had very much operating experience with any of the Tata companies. He did serve on some of the Tata boards, including Tata Sons. But he came in, therefore, with probably what was a very objective view of what needed to be done to ensure that the group was prepared for the next phase of growth. Under Ratan Tata, the group had achieved huge heights. It had grown 10 times in the decade before Cyrus took over the mantle from Ratan Tata. It grew from a $10 billion corporation to a $100 billion corporation. And I think Cyrus understood the challenges that would lie to grow the group beyond the 100 billion mark. And I think he had a very clear sense of first addressing some of the potential weaknesses and vulnerabilities that particularly became evident during the global financial crisis of 2008-9, ensuring that the right leadership was in place in all the Tata companies and the right business opportunities to grow faster, to grow further were pursued in sectors such as financial services, retail, and defense and aerospace. Overarching all of this was, I think, a sense of the kind of vision the group needed to have. And he set out a vision for 2025, which is announced at the first annual Group Leadership Conference that he chaired in 2014. And it was a huge vision. It was a vision that could see Tata's among the 25 largest corporations in the world, with a brand that would be amongst the most admired brands in the world, all while responding to the Tata mission of improving the quality of life of the communities its companies serve. So I think he was, in a sense, the full package that you needed as a leader, somebody with an outstanding vision, somebody with huge financial acumen, somebody who understood where the vulnerabilities lay and had the right plan of action to address them, and somebody who was a people's person who could make his team, who could make managers and leaders very comfortable around him. So huge loss for the Tatas when he was separated. And obviously, I think for the country to lose such a dynamic young leader who had several decades of contribution still ahead of him is a massive loss to the nation.
Right.
Something the Prime Minister also has commented about.
Mr. Rajan, what were some of the changes that he brought about at the Tata Group? Maybe some of those changes that still exist, if you can share them with us. At the same time, which aspects of the business he was most passionate about?
I think when you want to be a leader of a group like Tata's, you have to have a firm understanding of the key drivers of business success across sectors. The Tata Group, as they say, produces everything from salt to software. And so it is not possible to be overseeing such a large enterprise if you are somebody who's only connected with or passionate about a few businesses. And that's what one saw with Cyrus. He took an equal interest in all our businesses. Having said that, there were obviously some businesses that took more of his time because of specific challenges. A case in point, for instance, is Tata Motors, when the then managing director unfortunately lost his life. Cyrus was forced to step in and essentially lead the executive council of that company. In terms of interventions that I think are continuing to deliver great results, I think the huge focus he placed at Tata Motors on the passenger car business in terms of new models, in terms of better styling, in terms of highly improved quality, I think are things that are now paying off to the extent where the company has significantly gone up the league tables in terms of being a car producer of note in this country. Likewise, at Tata Steel, I think the push that he gave to Tata Steel's India operations and the launch of the operations at Kalinganagar with the first phase of 6 million tons of new steel production capacity at a time when that project had been lingering on and not really getting executed. He took the entire board with him, went down to the site, and over a period of time, 40,000 people were actually working at that site, the largest infrastructure project at that point of time in India. I think these are examples of the ways in which he led from the front. He saw the future, he saw the impact that Tata's could make, and he pushed to get the right combination of people, ideas, vision, and resources to actually deliver. And I think the group is seeing the benefit of all of that today.
Right. You spoke about Tata Motors. Today, Tata Motors has significantly grown its market share in the passenger car business. They are market leaders when it comes to electric mobility. Do you think the blueprint of that was actually prepared during Cyrus Mistri's time as chairman?
I think a lot of the blueprint, certainly for the passenger car business. I can't really comment on the electric vehicle space because that is something that is perhaps a little bit more recent. But certainly the kind of team, the kind of engagement that took place around ideating about the future were processes that he put in place or built on that already may have existed in the company. And as I said, the company is really seeing the benefit of all of that in today's context.
Right. Tell us also about how he chose people for his group executive council. He wanted advice, he wanted people who he could bounce ideas off. At the same time, you were the first chief brand custodian of the Tata Group. Tell us what he expected out of you.
So the role that he created for me was something that didn't exist before. He called it the brand custodian. And very interestingly, besides the normal focus on the corporate brand and on corporate communications, he insisted on folding in responsibilities for ethics. So he made me the chief ethics officer and responsibilities for CSR and sustainability. At that time, India had just come out with the requirement under law to spend 2% of net profit on corporate social responsibility. So he made me the chairman of the Tata Global Sustainability Council. I think this is a very differentiated way of thinking about how you actually deliver in your responsibilities on governance, on environment, on social issues, something that today has become a huge theme around ESG. He was, I think, a forerunner for that. Likewise, his decision to be a founder member through the Tata Group of focusing capital on the long term, a business organization with some of the largest companies in the world as members, dedicated to trying to shift stakeholder interests away from the short-termism that created the global financial crisis towards taking a much more long-term view of the responsibility of corporates, which becomes very important when you're tackling issues like climate change, which are creeping up on you but require actions that need to be taken over a long period of time. So in that sense, I think he was a man who was ahead of his times. The composition of the Group Executive Council you asked about, he was very clear he wanted a mix of people from within the Tatas. So there would be continuity, there would be a sense of comfort that a large part of the group would feel that people from within have also been elevated, everyone would get an opportunity. But he also wanted lateral entrance, people who would bring fresh ideas, would come with new thinking. So the portfolios of HR, for instance, business development and strategy were handed over to people who came in from outside with a new perspective. And I think this is what a group like Tata's needs, the right mix of commitment from the past, loyalty being rewarded, and consistency in terms of strategy and planning, along with fresh inputs of ideas for the future that can take this great group to even greater places.
Right. Mr. Rajan, his ouster from the group in October 2016, how did it really affect him? We saw a very bitter corporate battle take place post that. Mr. Mistry also didn't take it very well. He wanted to take the issue to the board. And then we saw that legal fight that went on for several years. When this news came to him, how did he take it and how did it affect him all these years? You were someone who knew him very well.
Well, an event like that can be obviously extremely depressing. It creates a huge amount of angst. And then to take on a corporate battle of the proportions this assumed obviously requires massive stamina and staying power. And the fact that he stuck it out till the very end, including the appeal which was made to the Supreme Court recently in this year, which amended some of the earlier judgment of the same court, speaks a lot about the individual and his determination to see something through till the very end. He obviously would not have been pleased with the turn of events and the final course that all of this took. But I think he was a realist, and he was somebody who was able to accept disappointment from time to time. He'd say, take it on the chin and move on. He was somebody who was used to dealing with a huge amount of pressure, even when he was Tata Group chairman. Every one of the companies would throw up periodic concerns and issues from time to time. He had learned to take all of that in his stride. So he would not obviously have been happy about what eventually happened, but I think he had the self-control, the stamina to be able to see it through till the logical end that he possibly could. I think stakeholders will acknowledge that by and large, a lot of what came out reflected his commitment to taking this group to a stronger place. Under his reign or his tenure, the group did very well. It outperformed the Bombay Stock Exchange sensitive index, and this it did without including the performance of its best performing company, which is Tata Consultancy Services. And I think after he left the group has gone on to do even better, which suggests that he left it in a strong place and it has gone on from strength to strength. So I think he would have been pleased as a continuing shareholder of the Tata Group, of Tata Sons, that the group has done well. He would have been sad that he was not there to continue to play a role, at least on the operating side. And I think he would have just recognized that it was time to move on and do other things. He'd started becoming a venture capital investor. He was obviously assisting his brother and members of the family in the Shapoorji Pallonji group. And I think those would have kept him quite busy. And I think, therefore, the loss today for all of us is huge because he has paid a price, his business has paid a price, and obviously he's no longer with us to share his fantastic ideas and visions for the future for this country and for the business world.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rajan, for joining us. We're also joined by another member of the Group Executive Council of Cyrus Mistry. Professor Nirmalay Kumar is joining us. Professor Kumar, give us a sense of your interactions, any anecdotes you remember at this juncture. We were reading a few pieces, and it seems that you had met him just a few weeks back.
Yes, good evening to everybody. I'm sorry if I'm going to be a bit faint because I'm just outside the Calcutta airport trying to get the flight to Bombay for tomorrow's funeral. But let me just say, we started off as colleagues. Of course, I was working for him. He was my boss. And over time, we developed a friendship. And the reason for that was his human qualities. He was extremely thoughtful. I loved that about him. The other thing was that he saw each business as working in a different industry. And he always urged everybody, let's try to understand what is the logic of each business and then try to see what are the strengths and weaknesses of our companies in that industry, and not, have a broad brush kind of answer where all companies we treat and all industries we treat the same. So he was very, very thoughtful that way. He spent a lot of effort trying to understand each industry, its logic, its key success factors, and the company's strengths and weaknesses. The other thing about him was he was a boss like no other in terms of promoters. Even as a promoter, he allowed me to sit in the room in front of others, openly disagree with him, and sometimes even violently so, because we knew that both of us were trying for the same objective. And our objective was to make the group a stronger group and to leave the group in a better place than when we took it over. And the fact is that his strategy document 2025 is the one that was followed by his successor. So it shows you that in terms of strategy, the thinking that he had was pretty solid. Now, as a human being, he was a wonderful human being. He was funny, he was charming, he was humble, he was honest, had the highest sense of integrity. And I'll just tell you a little story, for your listeners. We were in the Zurich airport checking out one of our companies which had set up an operation over there. And, at the end of about 4 o'clock, we are going back to the hotel. And he tells me, Nemalia, do you know this hot dog stand outside the Zurich train station? I said, yeah, he's a very famous hot dog stand. He said, Nemalia, can we stop over there and buy a hot dog? And so here we are, at 4 o'clock, stopping in front of the train station and buying a hot dog from a guy on the street for 5 Swiss francs. And, that was just, he could love something as simple as that, even if he ate at the best restaurants and he was a billionaire. And that was the very human side of Cyrus, He really was a good friend, a good human being, a great father, and a great husband to his wife. And you can see that everybody who met him and spent any time with him at the Tata Group could not say anything negative about him, even in the heat of the battle. The people who said negative things about him were outside the Tata Group, because they were trying to basically, get in with the Tata Group. But the people who worked with him at the Tata Group, not a single one of them had anything negative to say about him personally or professionally. And that is
right.
The best
Mr. Kumar,
mettle of the man. Yes.
Right. Mr. Kumar, one question, and we had asked Dr. Rajan about this as well. When he was ousted in 2016, that must have been a big setback for him. How did he take the news at that time, and what drove him to keep this legal battle on all these years? How did it affect him as an individual, as a professional?
So it was interesting that for him, he showed the same steely determination in a quiet manner that he showed during his tenure at Tata Sons. His objective never changed. He said, our objective is to improve the Tata institution for the future, to leave it in a stronger place. And for him, that was improving the corporate governance structure of Tata and institutionalizing it rather than having it dependent on a single person, whether it was him, his predecessor, or the next person. And he always used to tell me, Nemalia, if we don't institutionalize the corporate governance structure of Tata Group, then what will happen is, what if someday there's a bad chairman? He or she will have the entire power to do whatever they feel like. So we need to put in place these checks and balances where the Tata company individual boards are the final people saying what should happen to a Tata company, and the Tata Sons influences that Tata board through its nominees, as is the proper process. And that's what he was trying to fight for. And so even his court battle was really about that. It wasn't about him getting the job back as chairman. It wasn't about a vindication of what he had done. It was really about, can we improve the corporate governance of Tata Group as an institution, because it is the most valuable institution in this country, and we want to make sure it has the highest standards of corporate governance.
All right. Professor Kumar, thank you very much for joining us. Indeed, a big loss to people like you who he'd touched very closely, and of course for the Tata Group, for the Shapoorji Pallonji Group and the industry at large. We leave it there for the moment. News just coming in, and this is on the Conservative Party vote. Liz Truss is all set to become the next British Prime Minister. She will be succeeding Boris Johnson, and she has defeated her rival Rishi Sunak. We will be getting you our coverage on this at 6 p.m. But some updates on the election, on the appointment of the next Prime Minister after the break on News Centre. That's coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. News just in. Liz Truss will be succeeding Boris Johnson as the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The 47-year-old Foreign Secretary defeated Rishi Sunak by over 20,000 votes in the Tory leadership battle. She secured 81,326 votes compared to Sunak's share of 60,399. Truss will be the third woman after Margaret Thatcher and Theresa May to head the UK government. Let's get you key excerpts of that announcement that took place a short while back.
I'd like to thank the 1922 committee, the party chairman and the Conservative Party for organising one of the longest job interviews in history. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank my family, my friends, my political colleagues and all of those who helped on this campaign. I'm incredibly grateful for all of your support. I'd like to pay tribute to my fellow candidates, particularly Rishi Sunak. It's been a hard-fought campaign. I think we have shown the depth and breadth of talent in our Conservative Party.
All right, let's go across to Chris Curtis of Opinium Research, who has been tracking this election in the UK very closely. Chris, thanks for joining us. Give us a sense of what really worked for Liz Truss in this Conservative Party vote.
Well, it's not so much what worked for Liz Truss as what really didn't work for Rishi Sunak. He ended up being fairly unpopular with the Conservative Party members. By the end of this contest, they were the ones who have decided the result. And the big mistake he made was bringing down Boris Johnson, the previous Prime Minister. Conservative Party members thought that showed disloyalty, and they thought he sort of stabbed his previous boss in the back. They didn't respect and trust him for that, and mostly driven by that, they voted for Liz Truss instead.
Right. And according to your own research and your own surveys, what do people of UK want most from the new Prime Minister?
Oh, I mean, there's one thing that is overwhelmingly wanted by the British public right now, and that is a response to the cost of living crisis. It's completely true that the biggest problem people are facing is rising energy bills this winter. They want to know how the government is going to mitigate against some of the problems that will cause. And I think we're probably going to hear an announcement from Liz Truss on that over the coming days.
Right. And any idea what will be Rishi Sunak's political future?
Very difficult to tell at this stage. I think the most likely outcome is that he returns to the backbenches. He doesn't serve in Liz Truss's government. He's been putting forward an argument during this Conservative leadership election about fiscal responsibility, the idea that the government just can't spend money willy-nilly and has to be really responsible about how and where it prioritises government spending. I imagine he's going to not serve in Liz Truss's government and continue for the next few years putting forward that argument and hopes that even though he didn't manage to win this time, he can at least be right in hindsight.
All right. Thanks very much, Chris Curtis, for joining us, giving us your sense of the Conservative Party vote. And of course, we will be hearing from Boris Johnson shortly. There will be an announcement on the cabinet. There will also be a visit by Boris Johnson to the Queen. And we're also hearing that that this visit, this customary visit to the Queen may take place either today or tomorrow. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Centre. News and updates continue right here on CNBC TV 18. Do tune in at 6 p.m. for our special coverage on this Conservative Party vote and what the new Prime Minister of the UK has ahead of her and what this means for India-UK relations as well. All of that coming up at 6 p.m. with our special panel.